Hi, Impact 412 students. Chad Muessig here, and I was just hoping to talk to you for a moment. I know we haven't had a chance to meet in person. We tried to kick the group off, and hopefully soon we'll be able to do that. But until that time, I thought I'd talk at you, maybe even do a series of messages geared towards the younger adults. So let me start with a story. I am a sergeant in the Department of Corrections for New Jersey. And I had to go through police academy. The academies now, which are a little bit different from when I went through, they start off by lining the cadets up in a row, and they actually tell them to take a punch at each other. And you may laugh if you're not from this environment to understand it, but the idea is that if you've never been hit in the face, you have a fight or flight instinct. So the idea is by taking that hit to the face, you either one are going to realize, wow, this isn't so bad and it was really nothing to be afraid of, or two, this just isn't for me and I don't want to do this. But the idea is that what you're really afraid of is fear. You're afraid of fear. You don't know what's going to happen, so you might freeze up in a situation because it's never happened to you. And that is the idea of these cadets actually having to go through that, is to get that off the table, that idea of fear off the table. I'm going to start with a verse from 2 Timothy 1:7. Having talked about fear a little bit, 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline." So the first question you would ask yourself in this is, what is fear? If you look it up on the internet, it's stated as an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain, or a threat. So what is timidity? Because that's also mentioned in this verse. Actually means a lack of courage or confidence. So the real question is Timothy, who is known as one of the pillars in the Bible, was he a coward? Timothy was Paul's right-hand man, so I doubt that he was a coward. The Greek word here is delius. I may or may not be pronouncing it correctly because I'm no Greek scholar, but that's the word. It's used only here in the New Testament, and it actually means fearful. So why then would Paul say this to Timothy? I believe it goes back to verse 4. In that verse, Paul remembered Timothy's tears. He remembered when they were separated, Timothy cried. It was probably at Paul's second arrest, because Paul's been arrested a bunch of times. He's one of the apostles. He was traveling the world at that time, spreading the gospel. The Romans were constantly arresting him, so he was always in trouble. And so during his second arrest, I believe that's when he was separated from Timothy. And I believe that Paul wanted to simply reassure Timothy, possibly even himself, because he's writing from jail at this letter on 2 Timothy. And that even though that now he's on his own, that he has no reason to be fearful. Why? Because he has God's power, he has God's love, and he has self-discipline, which is also from God. So he was probably trying to reassure him. He wasn't calling Timothy a coward. He wasn't saying, well, because you're a coward, I have to say this to you. No, he's saying that we're not given that spirit, that's not of God, that there's no reason to be afraid, even though you're on your own, Timothy. There's no reason to be fearful. There's no reason to be a coward, if that's how you want to go, because God has given us power, love, and self-discipline. So how does that apply? It applies now because we see everything going on with this COVID-19, with this coronavirus. It's a scary time. Our whole world has been shaken up. But we find ourselves alone, unlike we never have before. We can't meet with our extended family. We can't meet with our friends, our classmates, our teachers, even our church family, who we really long to spend some time with. We're told to maintain social distances from each other in a society that just longs for contact. It's heartbreaking to see what it's doing. Yet, Paul says to not be fearful and timid. He says that those things are not of God. What does God give us the power? What God does give us is the power to overcome our fears. God gives us the ability to love others that are afraid. And God gives us self-discipline. to train ourselves in those areas and keep going regardless of our emotions and what our gut is telling us to do. So I'm going to leave you with this for this very short first segment. Is 1 Timothy 4:7. This is something Paul said earlier to Timothy. He said, "Don't waste time arguing over godless ideas and old wives' tales. Instead, train yourselves to be godly." And that's what I exhort you to do today. Teens, young adults, students, train yourself. Stay in the Word of God. Trust what God has to say. We're in uncertain times. We don't know the right from the wrong. We know that we're told to quarantine ourselves. We know that we're told to socially distance ourselves. It's scary. We're away from people. But what we can do is train ourselves to be godly, to grow closer to God, because He is our comfort. And He alone gives us the power, the love, and the self-discipline to get through this uncertain time. Thank you so much.
I didn't know it's you. I'm standing on your promises. I know your word is true.